Hello and welcome to what is going to be the first of a series of brief tutorials for the Northern Ireland Flight Sim enthusiast group. We were initially planning on doing just a few approach videos, but I think what I'm opting more towards doing, as we're doing now, is some basic flight tutorials. You know, how to fly the aircraft, how to get a feel for the aircraft. It's alright jumping into a sim, climbing into a jet with all the automation. You don't really get to fly the aircraft as such. You don't get that feel, the hands and feet flying. So this first episode is going to cover straight and level and turns, climbing and descending, and also coordinating the aircraft. So to coordinate the aircraft, we'll start that first. That's nice and short. Simple thing to do is just keep this little black ball in the center using the rudder pedals. So if the ball is, say, too far to the right, you'd apply right rudder. And if the ball is too far to the left, you would apply left rudder. Nice and simple. So, moving on from that, straight and level flight. How do you achieve straight and level flight? After your climb, you'll get the aircraft pitch or the attitude correct, and then you will achieve the speed that you require. So you'll then reduce your power to your cruising speed, and then you'll go for trim. Now in this instance, the aircraft is in trim, so I'm just going to descend a few hundred feet here, and then we're going to climb back up to 4,000 feet. We're going to go for the power, attitude, power, trim. So this should do. We're just going to lower our speed here. Now the climb speed in this aircraft, best rated climb for flaps up, is 76 knots, and we'd like to cruise at around about 100 knots. So we're just holding that nose up until we start to lose a bit more airspeed, and then we're just going to climb back up a few couple of hundred feet up to 4,000 feet. Okay, so we can go from here. So we apply full power, and we're climbing. So start now, just level the aircraft off. We'll allow the speed to climb. We're just going to stop any climb the aircraft tendencies to have whenever it is gaining speed. So there's 100 knots. So we'll take a chunk of power off, and we'll now trim the aircraft to maintain 100 knots. And there we have it. It's our straight and level flight. So this will be the same for any kind of principle. After a turn, you want to return to straight and level flight. Just level your wings when you're climbing. You want to achieve straight and level flight, just drop the nose to your cruise attitude. When you're descending, lift the nose to your cruise attitude, and adjust your power as such, and your trim. So now moving on to turns. In a turn, your lift generated by the wings is essentially turned over onto its side, which is what gives you the turning force that'll change the direction of travel of the aircraft. Similar to the way that putting the nose down will cause the aircraft to descend, and pulling the nose up will cause the aircraft to ascend, because of the way that the lift is being then generated from the shape of the wings and the angle that you have them at. In some cases, as I always say, putting the nose down will always make you descend, but lifting the nose up may not always make you climb. So that's one thing to remember, which would then be covered in stalls, which we'll cover at a different time. So going into turns, what we're going to do here is we're going to make a right turn of, I will go to 0, 9 or 0 degrees. So what we'll do here is, as we turn the aircraft, there's going to be the lifting force is going to be turned essentially on the side, and the aircraft is going to want to try to descend. All we're going to do is we're just going to arrest that with a bit of back pressure on the yoke. So to initiate our turn, we're going to remain coordinated with the rudder during this. We look left, straight ahead and right, and we're clear all around, and we'll start our turn. So notice how the ball slips a little to the right, so we just apply a little bit of right rudder. The aircraft wants to descend, so we just pull back on the stick gently. As we approach 090 degrees, we just roll the aircraft back onto heading, or back to straight and level. We'll readjust our rudder to coordinate the aircraft. And the trim isn't needed to be changed. The aircraft's gone back to its 100 knots and virtually straight and level. Minor adjustments may need to be made with the yoke, but it should never really be a major issue, and the aircraft will always have a tendency to return to what it was previously trimmed for in terms of airspeed. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do the same again. We're going to make a turn to the left to 270 degrees, so we're clear right, we're clear ahead, and we're clear to the left, and we start our bank. So now just watch the ball, it slips to the left. I've applied a bit too much back pressure on the yoke, so we're just going to arrest that again. Most of the nose wants to drop. And we'll just start to roll back out on heading. Coordinating with the rudder again, we'll just bring her back up to our altitude of 4,000 feet. Now it's not unusual to lose altitude in a turn. You just try to prevent it as best as possible, wherever possible. And especially in the simulator, because you don't get that flying by the seat of your pants feeling that you would when you're in the actual aircraft. So it does make it very difficult to kind of just gauge how much back pressure you need to apply on the yoke in order to achieve the same altitude throughout the turn. Now most modern jetliners, that will automatically do the work itself. It'll automatically trim to keep it at that altitude as you're turning, unless obviously you're making wild changes to the yoke. So moving on from turning, we're now going to go to climbing and descending. So first, the climb. So in order to climb, you apply full power, you adjust your attitude, and then you apply your trim. Our climb speed is going to be 76 knots, which is the best rate of climb and a flaps up configuration for this aircraft. So we apply full power, we lift the nose as we watch that speed start to decay. And we're coming back to 85 knots. 80. A little bit of nose up there just to get our 76 knots. Okay. And we hold it there at our 76 knots. And we'll just trim out that aft pressure that has to be put on the yoke in order to achieve that selected airspeed. So a little bit more trim. There we go. So now the aircraft will follow the flight path at 76 knots until we decide to level the aircraft. We're just going to turn here to avoid these clouds. Same principle applies for climbing turns. Obviously your lift is reduced in the vertical as it is turned to more lateral. So therefore you'll lose a bit of that lift efficiency. And as we approach 6,000 feet, we're then going to level off. So 100 feet to go. Lower the nose. Attitude. You have to give continuous firm movements of the yoke as the aircraft airspeed increases. There's 100 knots. Take a chunk of power off. And trim. And there we are. Straight and level again. So what we're going to do now is we're going to descend back to 4,000 feet when we get turned to the right here just before entering these clouds. Remaining coordinated with the rudder at all times. And then we will cover descending. Now what we're going to do is we're going to lose 1,000 feet of altitude with a low power descent, and then we're going to look at descending with flaps. So this looks like an appropriate heading. So first things first, for low power operations, we're going to put the carb heat on. What that does is circulates hot air through the carburetor so that the carburetor does not get an ice buildup and ultimately cause engine failure. So carb heat on is taking a little bit of power away from the engine. That's why we're starting to lose speed, so we have to keep the nose up to maintain 6,000 feet. We're going to reduce our speed, our power, sorry. And as the speed reduces down to 80 knots, we're then going to lower the nose of the aircraft to maintain that 80 knots and descend. So our 80 knots is achieved. We're in a stable descent, and we'll just trim out those control forces. As you can see, the aircraft is descending without any real requirement for us to intervene in that. So at this stage, let's say we want to maintain 80 knots, but we need to increase our rate of descent. We could reduce the power further, or we could keep the power setting as it is and add flaps. So what we're going to do is we're going to add 2 stages of flaps. It obviously changes the shape of the wing. The aircraft wants to drop because it's created more drag. It's also created more lift. So the aircraft wants to readjust itself because you've trimmed for 80 knots and it wants to maintain that 80 knots. And as you can see, with very little input required, we're now descending faster. And we're maintaining 80 knots. And then to recover from a descent, we want to level off at an altitude. What we need to do is we need to apply power, attitude, and then trim. When you apply power, the aircraft's going to want to nose up, as the power controls your vertical speed, and your attitude controls your airspeed. So we're approaching 4,000 feet, so we're just going to apply some power. As you see there, the nose has already started to lift, and what we're going to do is we're just going to level off at 4,000 feet, apply cruise power, also going to remove the carb heat. Sorry, I removed that before. I should have advised of that. When you're going to apply full power again, or any power, you put the carb heat back off again. So the aircraft is 4,000 feet. Our airspeed is slowly rising. We're still applying those forward control forces because the aircraft has a tendency to want to rise as the speed increases. And there we have it. 4,000 feet. We're just short of 100 knots. But we're straight, level, and we're stable. So, that pretty much covers the basic movements of flight. If you have any questions, drop me a little message, probably comment down below, and I'll try and answer anything you have as best as possible. Thank you very much. See you again soon.